My sister claims she forgot left from right because of autism, slammed into me so hard, she spilled hot soup all over me, refused to apologize, then called me ableist when I got upset. How is that fair? I'm 25 female and my sister is 31. We've been around each other pretty much our entire lives. Even as adults, we lived together for a couple of years before I moved out about a year ago. Because of that, I feel like I know her really well, her personality, her habits, the way she thinks. That's why everything that's happened over the past couple of years has been so confusing for me. About 2.5 years ago, she told me something completely out of nowhere. She said she was autistic. I didn't react badly or try to shut her down, but I was definitely surprised. It wasn't something she had ever mentioned before, and there had never been any discussions growing up about her possibly being on the spectrum. So naturally, I asked her how she came to that conclusion and whether she had seen a doctor or gotten a formal diagnosis. She told me she hadn't. Instead, she said she had come across a TikTok account that posted videos about autism and that everything they were saying just spoke to her. She felt like it described her experiences in a way that made sense to her. When I suggested that it might be worth getting assessed professionally, she immediately dismissed the idea. She said doctors don't take women seriously when it comes to things like autism, so she didn't see the point. At that point, I didn't want to push too hard. It's her life, and I didn't feel like it was my place to argue with her about something so personal. I just told her that if this was something she felt strongly about, then a proper diagnosis might help her understand herself better, but ultimately it was up to her. Still, I was curious. I asked her what specifically made her think she was autistic. She gave examples like not liking sudden bright lights, feeling overwhelmed by loud noises, or having trouble focusing when there were too many sounds happening at once. To me, those didn't seem particularly unusual. They sounded like things a lot of people deal with from time to time. When I said that, she pushed back pretty quickly. She told me it wasn't the same, that the way the videos described those experiences was different from how normal people experience them. She also said I wouldn't really understand because I'm not autistic. That was the first moment where I felt a little uncomfortable. Not because I thought she was wrong, but because it felt like the conversation shut down completely. Like I wasn't allowed to question anything or even try to understand without being dismissed. Even so, I tried to be supportive. I told her that if there was anything I could do to make things easier for her, she could let me know. I figured the best thing I could do was respect what she was telling me and be there for her. But as time went on, things started to change, and not in small ways. It honestly felt like her entire personality shifted. Before all of this, she was the kind of person who thrived on spontaneity. She could see a restaurant online she wanted to try and be ready to leave within 10 minutes. She loved trying new foods, meeting new people, and putting herself in situations most people would overthink. She could sit down with a complete stranger, strike up a conversation, and somehow turn it into a fun, memorable experience. After dinner, she'd suggest going out dancing, or if it was late enough, she'd want to drive out to the beach just for the atmosphere. She was outgoing, adventurous, and always open to new experiences. Over the year after she told me she was autistic, I started noticing changes, slow at first, but they kept building. The person I had always known began to fade, replaced by someone who felt different. She went from being spontaneous and outgoing to saying she needed 5 to 10 business days of notice just to go out anywhere. That phrase became something she repeated constantly, almost like a script. She stopped talking to new people altogether. When we did go out, she would only eat chicken, nothing else, and she refused to go anywhere near crowded places or the beach, which used to be one of her favorite spots. Anytime someone asked her about it, she would immediately explain that it was because she was autistic and that she just can't do things like a normal person. What made it confusing for me was that I had still seen her do those things occasionally throughout the year. It wasn't like she had completely lost the ability. There were moments where she would still be social, still try new food, still act like her old self. But she never acknowledged those moments. If anyone asked, she would stick firmly to the narrative that she couldn't do those things at all. At the same time, she became really active on TikTok. She would tag me in videos constantly, people talking about different autistic traits or behaviors, and she'd caption them with things like, "This is so me," or "This explains everything." What I started noticing was that after she'd tag me in certain videos, those traits would start showing up in her behavior. It was like she was adopting them into her identity. One example that really stood out to me was when she tagged me in a video about autistic people not liking to wear socks to bed. Before that, she had never mentioned anything about it. But almost immediately after, she stopped wearing socks to bed and started talking about how uncomfortable they were. I actually asked her about that one. I tried to bring it up casually, asking if she thought maybe she was just relating to the video rather than it being something she had always experienced. That's when she explained masking to me, how autistic people hide their true behaviors to fit in, and that she had apparently been doing that her whole life. After that conversation, I didn't push anymore. It felt like every time I questioned something, there was already an explanation ready that shut the conversation down. And it kept going like that. It wasn't one big change all at once, it was gradual. So in the moment, it was hard to fully grasp how much she had changed. But looking back now, it honestly feels like she became a completely different person over that year. Around that time, I had moved out and gotten my own place. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living with her anymore. And strangely, that's when things started to stand out even more to me, probably because I wasn't seeing her every single day, so the differences felt more noticeable when I did. A couple of weeks ago, I was over at my mom's house. We were getting ready to go out, and I was just sitting on the couch waiting for her to finish getting ready. My sister was sitting next to me, scrolling on her phone. Every now and then, TikTok recommends me videos about autism, but I usually just scroll past them without paying much attention. This time, I must have paused for a second too long, because my sister noticed. She asked me to scroll back up. So I did. The video was someone talking about how autistic people don't know their left from their right. It was presented like one of those relatable if you do this, you might be autistic type videos. My sister made this thoughtful, sound, like she was processing it. Without really thinking, I laughed a little and said something like, well, it's a good thing you didn't get that one. It wasn't meant to be mean. It was just a casual comment. But she didn't respond. She just stayed quiet for a second, like she was considering it. Then my mom came out, ready to go, and the moment passed. We got up and left, and that was the end of it. At least, that's what I thought at the time. I didn't think much about that moment at my mom's house at the time. It just seemed like another random TikTok thing she had latched onto, and I let it go like I usually do. But then this past Sunday happened. My sister came over to my place for lunch. It was a pretty normal visit at first, nothing out of the ordinary. I had made some soup, heated it up, and was carrying the bowl back through the hallway to the living room. She was standing kind of in the way, so I needed to get past her. Out of habit, I said, "On your left," just to let her know where I was moving. What happened next caught me completely off guard. She immediately stepped to the left, fast and hard, like an exaggerated, almost panicked reaction. She didn't just shift slightly out of the way, she moved straight into me. The force of it knocked the bowl right out of my hands, and the soup went everywhere. It splashed all down the front of me, hit the floor, and even got on the wall. For a split second, I just stood there in shock. Thankfully, I hadn't heated it as much as I normally do, because if I had, I probably would have been seriously burned. Even then, it was still hot enough to sting, and my skin started getting irritated almost immediately. I snapped. I asked her what she was doing, why she moved left when I had literally just told her I was there. Her response made it worse. She just shrugged and said, "Oops, you know I'm autistic. I don't know which direction is which." That's when I lost my patience. I told her straight up that it was bullshit. I reminded her that she used to work in a restaurant, that she's navigated spaces, taken orders, moved around people her entire life without any issue. I told her I grew up with her, lived with her for years. She absolutely knows her left from right. She didn't back down at all. Instead, she said she had been masking all those years and that I needed to stop yelling at her because it wasn't her fault. That pushed me even further. I told her it was her fault, and that if she had to mask to function like a normal human being, then maybe she should keep doing that, especially in situations where someone could get hurt. The second I said that, I knew it hit a nerve. She got visibly upset, her whole demeanor changing instantly. Without saying anything else, she grabbed her things and stormed out of my apartment, slamming the door behind her. And just like that, she was gone. I was left standing there covered in soup, my floor a mess, the walls splattered, and my skin still stinging from the heat. So I cleaned up. I wiped myself off, cleaned the floor and the wall, and dealt with the irritation on my skin. The whole time, I was replaying what had just happened, trying to wrap my head around it. By the time I finished, I checked my phone, and that's when things got even worse. She had already made a post on Facebook. A long one. She was calling me all sorts of names, saying I was ableist, that I didn't support her, that I wasn't the sister she thought she knew. She made it sound like I had attacked her for something completely out of her control. There were already a bunch of comments, people agreeing with her, supporting her, some even criticizing me without knowing anything about what actually happened. I couldn't just leave it like that. So I responded. I explained exactly what happened. I said that she absolutely does know her left from right, that I've seen it my entire life. I pointed out that she didn't just move the wrong way, she slammed into me hard enough to knock the bowl out of my hands. I explained that I got burned, that my floor was stained, and that the whole situation could have been much worse if the soup had been hotter. And what bothered me the most, I made sure to include this, was that she didn't even apologize. Not once. She just blamed it on being autistic and acted like that excused everything. Even after I explained everything, it didn't make a difference. People still came at me. Comment after comment calling me a terrible person, saying I was insensitive, accusing me of being ableist. Some of them went even further, saying I clearly didn't understand what my sister was going through and that I had no right to question her experience. A few people specifically latched onto the idea of masking. They told me that masking can be exhausting and even painful, and that it probably explained why she used to know her left from right but doesn't anymore. According to them, she had been forcing herself to function in ways that weren't natural to her, and now she was just being authentic. I tried to engage with that argument at least a little. I pointed out that if she truly didn't know which direction was which, then in that situation, she didn't actually have to move at all. I had already said on your left, so staying still would have solved the problem completely. But even that didn't land. They just kept saying it doesn't work like that, without really explaining why. It felt like no matter what I said, it was automatically wrong, because I wasn't the one identifying as autistic. At that point, I had to step back. My sister has a lot of friends in that community, and a lot of them are very vocal. My notifications were flooded with people calling me names, making assumptions about me, and painting me as some kind of villain. It got overwhelming pretty quickly, so I just stopped checking social media altogether for a while. I'll be honest about one thing, I know I shouldn't have said the behave like a normal human being part. That was said out of frustration, and I can see how harsh it sounds. I accept that I was wrong for saying that, and I understand why people focused on it. That's why I didn't include it in the title when I first talked about this, even though it did happen. But outside of that, I'm struggling to see how I'm entirely in the wrong here. If she truly believes she has been masking not knowing left from right her entire life, then I don't understand why that's the one thing that suddenly can't be managed anymore, especially in situations where it could cause harm. I've tried to be supportive of everything else. I haven't pushed back on most of the changes she's made or the traits she's adopted. I've tried to respect how she identifies and how she experiences things. But I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that she doesn't put me in a situation where I end up getting burned because of it. That's the part one can't reconcile. So now I'm sitting here, trying to figure out if I'm actually in the wrong for standing my ground on this specific situation, or if this is one of those times where something just went too far. So, am I the a-hole? What do you think? Where did I go wrong in this hole? Since you came this far, please don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you liked this, please press the like button. I will be grateful.